there's this sort of side of the industry that says there's going to be this demand for these depreciated luxury goods because so many people are happy to wear a watch after there's been one owner. There's another side of the industry which says, let's make these watches financial assets, and it's all about what their value is and increasing, and you buy it so you sell it later on. It should be the very rare situation for watches to go up in value. The most expensive watch should be, for the most part, a brand new one.
Greetings and welcome to this week's aBlogtoWatch Weekly. We're all here. Ariel's here. Morning, Ariel.
Hey.
David's here. Morning, David.
I'm back. Good morning.
You're back. Now, obviously, forget about the watch talk. Forget about all of that nonsense. All everybody wants to know is, David, where did you go on holiday?
I went not in a forest. I didn't build a fire, nor did I set anything on fire, which I guess is a good thing. But it was a good guess, Ariel. I like a fire, but yeah, not on holiday. And this is fun. We went to Italy first, and then just across the border to Nice. Somewhere a little bit above Nice. And then I took the train to Monaco to see a friend, and I took the train back. And I saw a fake Platinum Daytona on the train on the way to Monaco, and I was like, okay, this is it. But then, yeah, I saw some really nice watches in there. Real ones, actually, genuine ones.
So how much of a busman's holiday was it when you got to Monaco and Nice and all these places where there's no doubt fancy watch shops?
No, it was okay. I mean, Monaco, I didn't really see that much of it. I saw parts of it. It's just cool to see people wearing these nice watches out there. I only brought a G-Shock with me because I really wasn't sure, because on the way home we stopped in Florence, and I was not sure how likely it is to get pickpocketed or to get whatever, to robbed or something like that. I wasn't sure. Not about the other places, but more like Florence itself or Firenze itself. So I miss my watches, but I like a G-Shock, so that was fun to wear as well.
Good stuff. And was there any film entertainment on any of the transport that you used to get on your holiday? Because Ariel has some watch content on the big screen for us this morning. Did you take in any movies or TV shows during the holidays?
Well, I drove, but I did watch some classics when I had some downtime, and I watched Bad Boys 2, and there's this scene where a guy pulls up in this beat up car. And the guys don't take the car because they say it's just so beat up, and the guy is actually wearing a really nice IWC Porsche design chronograph in black, and it's probably worth more than the car itself. I don't think anyone really cared about it, but there's this rundown guy with a Hawaii shirt and a beat up car, and he's actually probably wearing his own watch, which is just a really nice condition, really nice Porsche design from, I don't know, the 80s or something. So that's a cool little thing. That's the only thing that I spotted.
Good stuff. Now, Ariel, just before we logged onto this call, you sent myself and David a snippet of a little video that has a bit of a story, and it kind of links into our first topic this morning, which is your article about luxury watch brands getting into the pre-owned business. And one of the points you make in that is about the watch brands controlling everything and trying to build the brand and, roll onto popular culture and, make things more of a cultural icon because they can control everything. And you sent us a cartoon that has some watch content, a cartoon I've never heard of, never seen, and I'm particularly confused by. But I suspect the way you've described to me, a number of our listeners will be familiar with this cartoon and a sudden left turn into watch culture that it appears to have taken.
Yeah, I mean, look, over the entire course of me, doing aBlogtoWatch, I love to find scenes in movies that are expressive of watch enthusiast culture. There's a lot of them for car culture or other types of hobby groups, but even if we saw cool watches in movies, it was very rare to find a scene which was a like a watch culture scene. And I think a good example of that in cars was like in Ferris Bueller, where they're talking about these vintage Ferraris. And vintage Ferraris have really nothing to do with the overall, plot of this movie, but they sort of add in this car enthusiast discussion, and you really never saw that about watches, even if watches were being worn. Flash forward to today, there are more and more and more of them, and I saw a cartoon that I'd been watching on Adult Swim, so sort of like a kind of half adult cartoon, and it was just a cartoon I watched for a long time, and they came out with this movie, and there's this whole watch scene. I just had to share it with you. I was like, at first I wanted to explain. I was like, no, I just need to literally record the scene and share it with you. And this wasn't just like, hey, there's a watch in here. Like, this was written and animated by someone who clearly like cared a lot about watches. And as I said earlier when we were discussing this, in the previous seasons of this show, I never saw anything related to deep watch content like this. So in the delay since they had made the show and then made this movie, it's like one or more people who were part of the production team became watch nerds. That's my suspicion. And they made that scene that, I mean, they talk about complications. I don't know that I've ever heard in any entertainment program the discussion and the term complications as we would use it in watch discussion, right?
Yeah, on the basis that this is a news show and under fair use policy, I think I'll just try and insert the audio now into it so as you can listen to it.
Hey, kid, I want to give you something. Your grandpap gave me this before your dad was born.
Is it more dumb news? You could tell me who my mom isn't?
Nah, just a watch. GMT Master, Venture Blue dial. Tells the time in 2 time zones.
It's heavy.
Yeah, that fourth hand there, little date window, those are called complications. Complications make a watch special. The more complications, the more valuable. Read the engraving Jonas put on the back there.
Iconico.
Yeah, close enough. It's Latin for choose your family. Blood doesn't make a family, love does. Your grandpap knew that. Choose your family. And remember that complications make it special.
What is the cartoon?
So the cartoon is called The Venture Brothers, and this is a movie which has a complicated name, which is like Radiant is the blood of the baboon heart, which you have to see the movie to know what that means. But It's a comedy, and again, it's...
What are you watching? And are you exposing your children to any of this stuff?
No, it's for adults. I was in I think my 20s when it first came out,
Okay. And they specifically reference a Rolex GMT Master, and it's got a fourth hand, as you heard. It's just a bit weird. So, and as you say, it goes on to go, and the more complicated the watch is, the more expensive. It's unnecessarily deep
in watch nerdery.
Exactly.
Right? Like they don't need all that to make the point they're making in the plot.
Exactly. It takes it like goes so far, and you're like, oh, that's quite interesting. They talk, and then there's another paragraph. It's very peculiar, but quite fascinating. And I've posited for a number of years that watch culture is slowly seeping into general fashion culture. You've seen it a little bit with the MoonSwatch, etc. But what we've yet to see, which I think we're starting to see, is what's happened in cars, which is the culture of something you can never own still being something you want to fanboy over. So at the moment, us watch geeks might fanboy over, I don't know, a Ferdinand Berthoud, and somewhere in the back of our mind is the thought that, yeah, we could actually put all the money together somehow to buy a $300,000 watch. We kind of make plans. But if I'm looking at a $1.1 million, I don't know, Koenigsegg or Ferrari or Aston Martin or whatever, I'm not sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I can just cobble the money together. But I might still go and buy the magazine about the Aston Martin. I might still go to the show to look at the Aston Martin and stay about it, even though I have no thought that I would ever own it. And I think what's starting to happen in the watch world is people who are just interested in things. I actually had 2 conversations over the weekend, 2 different people who both didn't realise that I had anything to do with watches. I was wearing the Mission to Mars MoonSwatch, as I have been for about the past 6 weeks, and it came up in conversation, and these guys have no particular ambition to buy an expensive watch, but they're just they would still say to themselves and still say to me, I am into watches, in the same way that some would say they're into cars, or, I'm into boats, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm buying the Azimuth 65, but I'm into boats and just learning about them and just geeking out on them. And I think what you've shown in this cartoon is indicative that clearly they've left that scene in because they think it will be interesting to people who aren't necessarily interested in watches.
I agree. I think what the part I like is that part of the sort of watch lover conversation which injects itself. I remember in media, and we would see people like who are really into music or really into movies or all these hobbies. You'd see people that go to extreme, but watch collector just was never really in there. You saw all kinds of niches, and now it's like they're playing catch up. It's like all these movies. It's like, hey, we got to have a watch collector thing in there. The person that wrote this clearly was like, I don't get to write about watches enough in what I'm doing. I got to throw this whole scene in there. And then they got the animator behind. He's like, no, you got to draw it this way, not this way. I'm like imagining, the whole this scene was nearly a minute long, in a whole movie that, again, none of this had to do anything with a plot. This is a total side scene, right?
So I think we'll get we'll find out where the Instagram account is and copy in the show, this week's show promotion, and see if we can find out who the writer is, because presumably they might be open to a job offer from aBlogtoWatch. Although a Tiffany Blue, although it's not called Tiffany Blue,
Venture Blue,
effectively a Venture Blue dialed GMT Master 2 does not exist.
He just says GMT Master, by the way. He doesn't throw the 2 in there.
Does it? Doesn't he? I thought he did. Never mind. Anyway, so how then do you think this links into your Monday article, Ariel? You penned this about luxury watch brands getting into the pre-owned business, the pros, the cons, and a list of reasons why they might be. Do you want to give us a wee intro, I suppose, scene setting as to who is doing what right now? Because they're not all doing the same thing. I
did write the article quite some time before the movie came out, so I can't claim there's any connection. But it is true that with more people being into watches, there's going to be more of a demand out there. And the article is really about why watch brands themselves are getting into the pre-owned watch business. There has always been a pre-owned watch business as far as any of us can remember, but it's a relatively modern phenomenon for brands themselves to get involved, whether they directly sell or in Rolex's case, they offer certification, the certified pre-owned, or various other permutations. And I wrote the article because I recognize that even though us as people who are intimately understanding the business models can get the pluses and minuses to it, from the outside, it can be an odd thing. And I think a lot of people still aren't sure where the good values are. And a lot of people that are relatively new, or I'm still getting to know, the watch industry, they're like, should I buy used watches from a brand? Why would they do that? Is that a good value? Is it not? What are the pros and cons? And I recognize that type of conversation isn't really happening now. When it comes to pre-owned watches, it's still sort of the Wild West when it comes to what to expect when it comes to condition and price and legitimacy from where you buy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So David, Ariel, as a quick, do you think in general it is a good idea that brands have got involved in certified pre-owned? Yes or no, David?
Absolutely. I think it's a great idea. I think it was long overdue, actually.
Right, okay. And Ariel, you think on balance it's proving to be a good idea?
I think it's inevitable. I think that it's a very good idea for some brands and it's a silly idea for others. I think that while 20 years ago, there was a much smaller spectrum of possible business models for luxury watch brands to adopt for themselves. Today and moving forward, not only are there going to be different types of ways of getting your watches to market, but pricing and things like that. There's all these hyper niches of selling watches in the market, and pre-owned is one of those niches that can work. So I think brands need to be realistic about it. I think they have to ask themselves what they're trying to get out of it. But there's a lot of value that can come from it. And I think that it's an area that needs to be more about pragmatism versus trying to get prices higher than retail. And this is a very important distinction to make. There's this sort of side of the industry that says there's going to be this demand for these depreciated luxury goods because so many people are happy to wear a watch after there's been one owner. That is the type of industry that I want to encourage and I think has room to develop. There's another side of the industry which says, let's make these watches financial assets, and it's all about what their value is and increasing, and you buy it so that you sell it later on. I don't support that. I think people should be buying these watches not as financial investments, but as fashion investments in things that they wear. And maybe the second time that a watch is sold, it's sold a third time for even less. It should be the very rare situation for watches to go up in value. The most expensive watch should be, for the most part, a brand new one.
Yeah, and I think that's where my issue is at the moment, which is that one of the points you make is about the brands just using this to make more money, which is fair enough. I mean, they're not charities, except the fact that, technically speaking, Rolex is a charity. The watches, for example, in the Rolex certified pre-owned that you would say on Bucherer, you can't quite compare like for like, because most of the watches for sale there are not available brand new direct from Rolex, in the Rolex catalogue. But basically every watch that's there that has an equivalent model that you could buy new, the certified pre-owned one is more expensive than the new one. And I think that's where this model falls down, not because that is a bad thing, but because fundamentally I think it's not sustainable long term. That might be 10 years, but eventually I think some of this will flip. And if the organisations have been built on the margins of selling watches at these prices, and if you like, I think one of the things you posit in the article is about that it's about benchmarking what the right price is for a used watch, and if it's available on Bucherer certified pre-owned, that's the price of your Rolex, then the price that you can sell your watch to your mate for in a cash sale is somewhere south of the price that's on the internet with certified pre-owned. And I think if you build the infrastructure on that basis, and then the prices start to come down to what it was 10 years ago, whereby a used watch, like a used car, was generally cheaper than the new one, then I'm not sure the infrastructure they've built will cope with it, and some of them might just get out of it. But you've got other brands like Linda Verdlin, you pointed out. I think they were the first ones to entertain this idea of buying their own stock back.
Yeah, really early on they started doing this.
You know the guys at Linda Verdlin?
Sure. And
have you ever had a conversation with them about what their motivation was as early adopters in doing this?
Yeah, we had a whole segment on Superlative about that.
You want to give us a hint or a tip as to what it might have been?
Well,
I mean, we're all delighted to go and re-listen to Superlative, so go and check out the Superlative of Linda Verdlin.
Look, I think what's important to recognize there is they didn't have this sort of master plan about it. It was more that they realized that they could just sort of do it in-house, and there was advantages. In some instances, and I think this is what's important, is that a brand like that actually has people saying, like, I have this unwanted thing, I'm thinking about selling it because I really want this new thing that you have. And now the brand, because it has this relatively small network, is in a position to say, okay, Richard over here has this model. He's no longer, he had it for a couple of years and it's in good condition. He no longer wants this other thing. What I can do is I can offer him to take that back and then give him a new watch at a discount, and then take that watch and now give it to someone else who's been bugging me. Can you make me one of these? Because I only made a relatively small amount. The 50 or so pieces I made, or even less in many instances, are still popular sometimes years after they're made, but in order to maintain limited production, you can't make more. So buying and then selling back to people these limited edition models, given the small network of people and the very small number of watches they made, happened to work quite well. And so it sort of was a situation that came into their lap, so to say.
Yeah, and there are a number of brands that don't do CPO yet, I don't think, or don't do it directly. Rolex is probably now the biggest brand. I mean, it's just the biggest brand in general, but is the biggest brand that now have a kind of official way of doing it. A lot of, Watchfinder is owned by Richemont. There's a kind of intuitive way in which Richemont Group, I think, will try and plug into the network. I assume if I want to go and buy a Cartier just now, the shop is probably able to offer me a way of exchanging that, either directly or indirectly, into a bigger market. I wonder whether one of these models works better than the other. I mean, you've got brands like Omega, Breitling, who, as far as I'm aware, don't yet have a directly recognized CPO program. Can we expect them to come up with one? David, are these brands just sitting, waiting to see how Rolex get on?
Well, certain things are applicable to other brands. What Rolex is doing. I'm really not sure that this is one of those areas. As Ariel said, there are a lot of gray areas. People don't really know what to expect from a lot of these brands. Where the values are. What to look out for. With cars, we all know, and it's easier to research. And, using eBay and Chrono24 and some others, you can shop around for pre-owned watches. But the question remains, where the value comes in. Do you get some additional warranties or like a factory service or whatever else? So, it's a transitional period for now, and we'll see where it takes us. And some brands will do it better than others.
So how early on, if in a scale of like 1 to 10, where 10 is that this is all quite mature and sorted out, how in the foothills of this market are we? And it kind of touches a little bit into that cartoon and what you've just said about cars, David. That is, more information becomes more easily available about how much it should cost to buy something, and more people are interested, the market will settle. My feeling is we're like stage 2 out of 10. This still has a long way to go until everybody really figures out what to do. Ariel, what's your thought? Scale 1 to 10, how far along the road of a mature market like the car industry has, with certified pre-owned and second-hand dealers and buying stuff off the forecourt, are we?
I'm really glad you brought that question up, because I was going to say that this is still a very immature area when it comes to what these things should be priced and the margins brand make. I think a lot of companies that specialize in pre-owned have not made money. They may have sold a lot of watches, but the cost of checking the watches and listing the watches and things like that have been a lot. Rolex basically merely offers a certification placard, and most of the work is in the hands of the retailers, who themselves have to resell it. What's interesting about that is because they do the watchmaking work in-house, they know exactly what they can resell it for, right? Like, I put in $1,000 of watchmaking, so I have to at least sell it for $2,000 more so I can recoup that and then maybe make some money. Not all types of companies are going to have that type of control. Some brands are just going to decide, we want to buy these watches back, these others we don't. They might have a listing on their site. These are watches we're willing to get right now if you have any of these, or they might call people. I think that what we know is that pre-owned in one way or another is going to be part of the official conversation, just like brand new. It's going to take on a lot of different forms and flavors over the next couple of years, and we should expect to see it in the highest end brands. If Rolex is doing it, then it's open for anyone. Will Patek Philippe have a pre-owned salon? There's nothing stopping them from. It could happen.
I think that's an interesting point you make about the people involved. I mean, you go to a site like Watchbox, and some of their sales folk are very well known. And I know from speaking to them that a lot of it is they know where the watches are at the real high end. They've been there a long time. They've sold 2 or 3 of these to other people. So actually, the market intelligence is in the person of saying, well, somebody just approached me for an FP Journe XYZ. Oh, I know someone that's got one of them. I wonder if I can, make a trade like an old-fashioned stockbroker of, I'll buy it off of you for X, I'll sell it to Y, and I'll make the difference. Whereas a lot of these organizations that don't have that personal touch or information are just relying on posting it on an internet, on a website, hoping somebody sees it. There's not actually the same amount of work that goes on in the background. Now, that's obviously why maybe Watchbox prices are more expensive than, eBay, because they're putting in a lot more work to make the trade. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see just how this washes out. I think it's, a lot of these websites now appear to be a little bit like carpet companies or bed companies. There's always a sale on, and that worries me for the health of them. I wonder how many of them are fundamentally chasing turnover rather than chasing actual profit. But we shall see. Give us your thoughts on this. Email the show podcast at aBlogtoWatch.com, or send us a voice note on Spotify or via that email address, or Instagram. Okay, let's review some watches. In fact, before we review we're going to review some watches, but we're also going to talk about Hemingway. So, Ariel, you were recently on a trip. Alex tried to get you to kidnap a cat or something. I'm not sure how that went, but talk to us about the watches that you saw and the whole Hemingway experience and the fancy dress. I'm still disappointed you didn't take part in it.
So you're upset that I didn't dress up as a Ernest Hemingway look-alike?
I just think that would have made it. I think that was what the articles for both of these watches needed, was a picture of you dressed as Ernest Hemingway. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't actually know what Ernest Hemingway looked like, so I have no idea.
Well, you want to know what?
For all I know, he was 6'6" and from Nigeria. I have no clue as to how like the likeness, but it's one of these kind of Elvis impressions that it doesn't matter that you're Japanese, you can still be an Elvis impressionist.
So let me ask you this: if you're in a room with, let's say, 40 pretty good, lookalikes. This was like the 42nd annual iteration of this event. Like, they've been doing this a long time. They take it seriously. It's not just standing there discussing or like the look. You have to discuss. Like, you have to have a statement of like why you embody the spirit of it. They refer to him as Papa.
Oh my goodness.
People also specialize in Ernest Hemingway at different points in his life. So like the old one, the younger one, just the mustache, full beard. Facial hair seems to be a running theme amongst all of this, as is a lot of drinking.
Well, you're not qualified at least in that bit, no?
Yeah. I was a great spectator, though. I appreciated it. I think what impressed me the most is that apparently to look like Hemingway convincingly, you need to look like it's freezing outside, right? Like you're sitting in a boat, a small dinghy in the ocean, and you would need a lot of clothing for that, like you were sitting in a boat off of Scotland. But in Key West in July, wow, all the water's on the inside, basically, right? You're sweating in there, and these guys were really doing their best not to just, just explode in sweat all over the place, wearing these heavy things. I mean, they put on a great show. They spoke. I mean, it was. And the winner got a Cuervo Sobrinos watch. He was extremely happy with it. It's a really interesting relationship there. I still don't necessarily know that the Ernest Hemingway name has to be there on these watches, but it, again, as is many things, it makes people think about a person and a place and an emotion, which is what you need with watches. And they're pretty handsome. These were just over, one's a $3,100 piece, the other one's $3,800 for the GMT that also comes on a strap and a steel bracelet. This was a cool thing, and I'm actually interested in getting to know the Cuervo Sobrinos brand more, because it's the only luxury watch brand that has that connection to sort of old world Latin Spanish luxury. Obviously, it's originally a Cuban brand, so. Yeah, I actually need to read more Hemingway so I can start doing all the quotes that they were doing. It was getting a bit intense.
I'll just focus on the mustache.
Yeah.
Yeah, David, I think maybe actually that's a good point. I think next year for the 43rd iteration of this competition, you need to go, because I think you've got more of a chance of being a young Hemingway than Ariel has.
I'm not sure I
that would
want
work.
to be that, but I appreciate it. Actually, I went there with Ariel to the house where Hemingway used to live. I remember we did that like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. That was a lot of fun, actually. Distinct memory still.
You're a big fan of this brand, which I'm still going to refuse to try and pronounce and try and get through this entire conversation without saying the brand name because I'll just embarrass myself. You're a big fan of this brand, David, and they appear to be stepping up their game somewhat. Maybe it's just our coverage, but I don't think it's just us. They do seem to be really gaining a little bit of a foothold.
Yeah, I like me some Cuervo y Sobrinos very much.
You see, I just can't do that. It doesn't work with my Glaswegian accent.
I wrote about one back in February. They did this Historiador Gran Premio de Cuba, and it was just cool colors and it's vintage themed, but very out there. Chrono that I actually want to see hands on very much. I mean, their pictures were surprisingly good. A lot of brands could, take Cuervo y Sobrinos as an example to follow on how to present a watch when it's new. I mean, from every single angle and dial close-ups and all the rest of it. So it was easy to fall in love with, but it was just such a cool watch. And yeah, they are on a roll. It's good to see a small and up-and-coming brand. I mean, they've been around for some time, but some I like very, very much, and some others I can totally live without. I like me a cool Cuba-themed chronograph if there ever was one.
Good stuff. Ariel, do you know the history of the brand? Obviously, based in Cuba, my assumption, rightly or wrongly, is it be one of these brands that died and then was brought back by a couple of entrepreneurs, or does it actually have a continual existence as a watch brand?
No, it died. I mean, this was a vestige of an earlier version of Cuba prior to being communist. The brand is now a Swiss brand, so it doesn't really have a Cuban element to it. They've done events in Havana. Right now, it's not a great place to be right now. But look, I mean, they're like many brands which have an inspiration. They know their history. There's a lot of things to go off of. The original brand did have a little bit of distinctive style to it. And Ernest Hemingway was a fan. When he lived in Cuba, he went to the workshop there, the atelier in Havana, and apparently bought watches from Cuervo and Sobrinos. So it was a popular regional brand at the time. It was a real thing, and there's so many watches, for example, that celebrate old world Italian or French or Swiss luxury. But with, the Spanish, the Latin thing, it of course is Spain. There's, all of South America, New World, Cuba. It's just, there's so many different aesthetics and places that a brand like Cuervo Sobrinos could do well. And that's, I think, what's interesting about it is there's a very rich, area of Spanish-speaking territory that I don't think are served as directly by some of the traditional luxury brands. So, of course, you can make a lot of mistakes down the road, but I think there's actually real potential there.
Yeah, I have to say it's a lovely looking watch. Particularly the brown leather with the cream dial does look like the kind of watch you would wear in the kind of sweaty tropics with your hat on. They do appear to have really captured, as you say, it does look Spanish. Don't know what it is that makes it look Spanish, but it doesn't look Swiss or Italian or French. It definitely looks somehow like a Spanish watch. At the other end, from old worldy Hemingway typewriters, fountain pens. I don't know. I know nothing about Ernest Hemingway, as you all have gathered. The other end of this, hands-on with the Citizen PCAT. Lots of letters, some numbers, radio-controlled watch. I quite like the look of this. Ariel, give us your thoughts on this range from Citizen and where does it fit in the world of radio-controlled watches from other brands, including Citizen?
I mean, these are products that have primarily done well in Japan. And the reason is because Japan is one of the only places that I know where you can get a clear signal from the atomic clocks via the radio signals. Well, in America, it's especially where I live in California, you don't really get the signal that well. So people don't really use these as much as I think they have in Japan. In Japan, especially with trains and the use of public transportation, which is quite on time, needing to be precisely on time was a big deal, and it was a loved thing. So this watch, you didn't have to put in a new battery because it was eco drive, and you need to set the time. This is exactly what the sort of Japanese domestic market consumer really, really values. And this is the technology that Citizen has been perfecting for a long time, and they keep adding things to it. There's other complications. What I think the natural next step here is to do what Casio has done and integrate this a little bit more into Bluetooth, because I think that being able to control this watch and do certain things with it, with your phone as well as to the watch, worked very well for Casio, and I think it could work very well for Citizen. Citizen is the leader in the quality of the dials in terms of them being able to have light go through them. So these are some of the fanciest looking ones. And I think that there's a lot in store for this. For many years, people just didn't value these because they weren't expensive enough, and a lot of people around the world couldn't necessarily use the features. But I think what you're seeing, and again, I hate to keep bringing up Casio in a Citizen conversation, is that you can sort of teach some of these old dogs new tricks. These are types of watches for 20, 30 years. We've seen these have been around. We're familiar with them. And the new tricks would be adding Bluetooth functionality and some of those little extra things. So Citizen went in a slightly different direction than Casio. They now have a great assortment of mechanical watches they brought back, and they have some amazing high-end, very, very high-end, high-accuracy quartz. Now they're trying to sort of figure out, how much of their catalog is going to be this, technical product versus an automatic watch versus, a more simple eco drive, a three-hand. But I definitely think that we're going to see an evolving strategy, and maybe what Casio has done well will provide some hints.
Yeah, for $650, radio controlled, good finish, and it has a double deployant clasp on it, which I'm a big fan of on leather. In particular, David, do you like the look of this? Or is it just too much, as Ripley says in the article, too much like a Swiss Army watch? It's just got so much going on that it puts you off.
It does have a lot going on, but that's what these are about. Expecting these to not have as much going on is, you're looking for a different watch. This is what the point of these are. You press all the buttons at once, and then it does something else, and you see all these different scales and subdials with multiple functions and all the rest of it. And I've had a radio controlled, actually GPS controlled Citizen before, and it was a lot of fun. It was beautifully made, fantastic watch. Never actually gel with it just because it's just so difficult to use. But if you're one who likes to go through the pages of a manual and learn how to use these and make use of all that utilitarian complications and features and all the rest of it, then it's great. And I think the case is out there, the bezel, the lugs, the crown, everything is turned up to 11 in some ways, but it adds up to a whole that is not offensive. It's just a lot. But here where I live, I see this kind of watch all over the place. People love these things.
Yeah, I think the thing about these kind of Citizens, I find them much easier to remember how to use than the equivalent G-Shocks.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that you can also access the buttons on the Citizen, unlike the equivalent G-Shocks, also makes them just a lot less frustrating to use. Citizens seem to have managed, even though they're incredibly complicated, for you to somehow be able to vaguely remember how to work your way around the menus to figure out the functions. Whereas in a G-Shock, every time I try to change an alarm, I have to go and find the manual because I use it so irregularly that I just can't remember.
But now you can just do it with your phone. It's so much easier now.
Yeah, but I have to pair it with my phone again. I've probably changed my phone since the last time I wore a G-Shock. But yeah, and that...
Don't forget your password.
Yeah, well, it does seem a bit counterintuitive that the way I control this small thing on my wrist is I need to find the big thing that actually has buttons that I
Hey,
can
you're the one
push.
that wanted that small thing in your wrist to beep with an alarm, okay?
Yeah. I'm a big Citizen fan, I have to say. My original Citizen robot
some of the
face
Citizen ones are intuitive, some are not. I've definitely Casio and Citizen both. We have to say, throw Seiko in there as well, and some of their quartz watches. If you don't have the manual, good luck knowing how to use that thing.
Let's move it on to a different release, which has some similarity in the not at all sense, but maybe it does. And this is a new release, brand new from Breitling. The Endurance Pro. This is particularly the Ironman World Championship watches. We've spoken about the Endurance Pro a couple of times in the past, and I still think this watch does not get enough praise because my experience of it is absolutely a phenomenal watch. And now there's one with a titanium case, which, although it's a co-brand with Ironman, it's very subtly done. It's very nice. And I think this is the first watch I've seen in a wee while that makes me go, yeah, I actually want one of those. What do you guys think of the Endurance and this one in particular?
This was a great success for Breitling. It fit a great marketing niche because it had the convenience and comfort and reliability of like a G-Shock, but with the luxury and fashionability of, a European luxury object. And for that reason, it did really, really well. It was also sort of colorful and sporty, and it was trendy. That they added titanium, part of it is kind of a joke because the whole point of it was to be, this inexpensive thing, carbon case material. Yes, lightweight, but about as cheap as you could get. They could have gotten a lot cheaper, but we don't want to denigrate the fine Breitling name here by having a just $1,000 or $1,500 watch. Can't be under $3,000. I think it's more than that now. You'll have to remind me how much it costs in titanium. I'm guessing it's more than carbon. This collection has critical momentum. People like it. Adding in that titanium one just adds sort of another flavor for people who kind of like it. I don't think they need the model. I think they have plenty of watches already, but I think that's sort of the wonderful thing about it is that's how to be successful as a watch brand. It's not be like, we only make these products. It's, can we do this weird thing now in titanium because some people will like it and a year from now they won't want it. And a year ago, they wouldn't have wanted it. So I think Breitling is quite rapid in its ability to respond to some of these demands. And we have yet to see how successful that will be, but it does look like they are responding quite rapidly with these niche offerings.
Yeah, the carbon one, or Bright Light, I think it's called, isn't it, is $3,600, which I think is a couple of $100 more than the standard model. That's the
it's under 3,000 now. Wow.
No, over 3,600.
Yeah, 3,600. Okay.
3,600, and then the titanium is 3,950, so $350 more than the entry level Ironman co-branded.
I mean, this is a high profit item, just like the Omega Swatch, MoonSwatch is a high profit item. In a very similar way, this is, again, high margin for Breitling. Congratulations to them for being able to pull something like this off. Because again,
round of applause, Sylvan. Round of applause for Sylvan, everybody.
Yeah, no, because it is not an expensive product to make, and they can just whatever the market is willing to consider as the entry point of Breitling, that's what they'll spend on this. And they found that it's just over 3,000, and that's fantastic, because I think that 10 years ago this would have been a lot harder to move at proportionally that price point. So this is definitely a positive testament to the brand that George Kern and Sylvan and the others have put together.
Yeah, I still want to know, and I forget to ask him this every time he's on, because they're advertised as being traction proof, and I still have no idea what that means. So they talk about
is that good or bad for chafing? I'm just not sure.
Well, I don't know, because it talks about how it's like non-magnetic, thermally stable, hypoallergenic, highly resistant to scratches, corrosion, and traction. I don't know what that means. Does that mean I can run it over?
I guess I don't know. Try to stop things with friction with your watch case.
Yeah, don't strap it to anything.
Yeah.
David, what does traction make you think of in relation to it's good for a watch?
It's just me.
No idea.
It's just accelerating in a car that has a lot of traction, but I presume 99.99% of modern watches can handle that, so it's not unique to this one.
So, what did they want to say? Is it like they wanted to say it was resistant to G forces, but couldn't use the phrase G shock? So they had to use traction. I don't know. It's very weird. And next time Sylvan on, I will ask him. So Sylvan, if you're listening, you better gen up just in case your marketing people put this in and didn't tell you.
I'm pretty sure Sylvan had absolutely nothing to do with that phrase or anything like it. But still, sometimes, broadly speaking, not just about Breitling, but this is a good example. I just imagine people sitting there in an office writing these press releases, and they're like, "Oh, we need one more thing to say. What should it be? We've already said everything." And just brainstorming, and they put traction there, and then they look into it like, "Is this a double entendre? Is it like can we say it? Is this like bad for the product, or is this something we can stand behind? Can anyone prove that it's not true?" And it's right on the edge there, because I really genuinely don't think that too many of these are actually traction proof. If you dangle these like on a wire after you're behind your bicycle and you ride down the Tour de France, or even just you fall and you slide on tarmac, technically even these carbon cases will probably need replacing. So it's a weird statement for sure, but apparently someone thought they can get away with it.
I think it's a rule of threes. It was highly resistant to scratches and corrosion. That didn't work. We need a third word. Let's use traction, because nobody knows what it means. Nobody knows what it's talking about, and it's fine.
They
Nobody
could just say it's like it's not reflective. It's a matte surface. They could have done that.
they can say it's resistant to eclipses, or something like that. It's you're not going to put it to the test, and it will probably it's just a statement. It just sounds cool, but whatever.
Well, you're the one that mentioned the eclipses and things, so that leads us nicely on, and we'll try not to give this too much attention. New release, Swatch, MoonSwatch, Moonshine Gold, Swiss, National Day, and Pattern Watch. Is it time to say, is it time for an intervention somewhere in Swatch Group?
Okay, I want to know, why did Rob from Watch Pro, our friend, write an article on how this is supposed to be some big thing, some major new fresh launch? And I mean, if you didn't look closely, this is basically the strawberry thing.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I mean, this is was that popular? Who actually wants this? Who in the designs yes, this is the way to add the Swiss flag to the watch?
Someone is super hooked on this technology that they realize they can print on a second hand, and now they can't get over it.
I love that they're excited by it. I really am, and I agree with you, David, 100%. I just don't know why nothing else on the watch is changing.
I mean, I'll be honest, I've been wearing this Mission to Mars watch for the past 6 weeks, and I absolutely love it. It's absolutely great. I can do anything with it. I've even got it wet, and I don't care, because if it scratches, it's not going to be any harm. No harm, no foul. It's absolutely fine. Do anything you want on the farm, no problem at all. It's great. But
you actually believe that watch can survive a mission to Mars?
Well, it'll probably survive it better than I would.
I mean, okay.
My problem is that, I have multiple problems with this, but the whole Swiss image thing on the hands of this, it is just time you just need to stop it. It's enough already.
I want to see more of these cool shapes in the Swatch kind of production style. I don't know why they're just stopping with the Speedmaster. I think they can go way above and beyond here. They can do so much more stuff. They could have all these cool, sexy, iconic shapes. Imagine the Blancpain 50 Fathoms in plastic. You know what I mean? It would have a beautiful look. Clearly, it wouldn't replace, the more expensive one. But that would do really well. They could start making all these shapes that are, luxury icons for them in these sort of fun styles. But they're just stuck on the Speedmaster. And I guess it's doing well, but they're not even doing new colors at this point. To do drab gray is the one that you do all your limited editions around. I don't know. I don't know how well they sell. Obviously, someone there knows what they're doing. Swatch Group has a lot of smart people in the numbers department. I just think as collectors, we're confused.
Yeah, David, you wrote the article on this,
Yes.
or the launch review. There's an image where it has a copyright symbol on it
Yes.
above the Swiss made. What's that all about?
Well, it was present. It's present actually on all Swatch watches, as far as I know.
Is it?
Yes.
I just can't.
Yeah, but and this one is, it's been on the MoonSwatch for a long time. It's and it says copyright, like the little copyright logo, Swatch AG, which is Swatch Company, and 2021, which is funny because the MoonSwatch never existed in 2021.
In 2021. Well, we've had this conversation before.
Yes, and it's still on there. And when you guys ask why they're not changing anything else with this watch, this is a great way to move old inventory or stock inventory or something like that by just changing a hand. Everything else remains the exact same thing. So you can just pump out as many of this main collection MoonSwatch, that looks the closest to the actual MoonWatch. I think this is the closest iteration. And just change the seconds hand and maybe build like some sort of a buzz and have people lining up. I'm not sure. I would love to hear from our listeners if you guys have seen queues outside Swatch boutiques where you live for these new releases. I believe it happened for the strawberry one a month ago. I'm not sure if it will continue happening if there's like a new release every full moon, technically.
I want to make a comment here on the copyright symbol that you see here. I don't think that has anything to do with Swiss made. I think what they're trying to do is assert a copyright for the entire dial itself. There is a high likelihood that there will be copycat watches, and the case is not something that they can really protect that well. But the dial, apparently, they have as sort of maybe a design protection there, or some type of added protection they feel that they have to prevent people from copying this dial layout above and beyond not being able to copy the Omega or the Swatch logos. And what we see on here are a number of copyrighted elements. There is the Omega logo, the Swatch logo, the Speedmaster logo, the MoonSwatch logo, and then ostensibly I think that there is a copyright of the entire dial. So I think that Swatch Group is very concerned about others copying this and then just changing some names. So I think that having that on there is maybe one more way to try to thwart people. I don't know ultimately all the legal protections they have, but they're obviously very, very concerned about look-alike watches, not at $300, but at maybe $150.
Yeah. So don't you dare put a dot over 90 if you're making a watch. Yeah, we already spent far too much time on that. Let's move on to something else. A classic iteration of a watch, and this is the hands-on with a limited edition Tag Heuer Monaco chronograph racing blue watch. A little bit like the MoonSwatch, who've gone too far. Is it time for Tag to say, you know what, the Monaco, nobody's interested anymore? Because I've never understood the Monaco. I've never met anyone who wears it who actually finds it comfortable to wear. They look great, but then you put them on and they're like, well, what is this just rolling over my wrist? Is it an icon that just needs to be left to sleep and sit in a museum cabinet somewhere, or should they still are they flogging a dead horse, keep on producing limited editions of these?
Are you anti-Monaco? Is that it?
I think as I'm asking this question, I think I'm discovering that I am.
I mean, I think what's amazing about the Monaco is the case shape itself is kind of remarkable. It's like, is it a square? Is it a tonneau? Is it a this? It doesn't really come across as well in pictures, but once you sort of see the thing as a form, it's really quite a remarkable shape. It does not suit all wrists. And I think that Tag Heuer has been experimenting with how to make it wear better for a long time. It can't really change the dimensions of it, make it thinner, make it longer without screwing up the way it looks. So it's sort of been like, do we put a bracelet on it? That kind of worked. It's just not a great watch for all wrists, but it looks cool, like it's a cool object. So I think that's how to best understand it. It's like cool artwork you can wear, but this is not where you go. And again, it depends on your anatomy or the strap you have, but for like sheer ergonomics.
David?
Yeah, I'm a fan of the Monaco as long as I don't put it on my wrist, and then once I put it on, I still desperately want to like it. And there's very few that I actually like. And this one that we went hands-on with, this is the Racing Blue version, whatever that means. It's a blue strap, it's a gray dial, blue subdials, and this lime green seconds hand.
That's like Venture Blue, by the way.
Oh, okay. And it was really very cool in person. I remember I was like, okay, this is the Monaco for me, because it looks light, at least a little bit, just because of its gray. Maybe it was even in titanium, and it's in titanium. So I disagree with Ariel when you're saying that it couldn't be any thinner. I think if they could shave off a few millimeters, it could still be fun. But there's this case profile picture that I took, and it's in the article, and I could easily see myself liking this same shape and this Darth Vader kind of vibe. Just like 2 millimeters. If they could get rid of that, at least that much, that would be fantastic. But
this is perfect for a swatch version. Perfect.
Oh man,
Utterly perfect.
But the Monaco
Yeah,
Swatch.
there's a collab.
Are we ready
There's
for
a
that?
collab we're never going to see. See, what I don't get is Tag have got the Monza case shape, which is kind of it has, you can see the relation between it and the Monaco, but the Monza's so much more wearable, so much more commercial.
But the Monaco
also,
is so much cooler looking.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's only cool looking if people can wear it. And
have you seen women's fashion? They don't care if you can wear it.
Okay, right, fair enough. Right, okay, I'm moving on. I'm clearly in the minority here. I just don't get it. I know that Simon, who was on last week, is a big Tag fan, so I'm glad he's not here because he'd just be having a go at me. But yeah, it's just, I agree with you, David. It looks really cool sitting there in a photograph, and then as soon as you put it on, it's like, this is enormous. It's too thick. It's too unwieldy. And I wear big watches. I wear a Panerai, for goodness sake. This should be the kind of watch that I would go, that, but it just doesn't. I don't know why. There you go. Horses for courses.
The funny thing is, it looks big on your wrist when you put it on, but once you see somebody else wear it, I've seen people wear it, and it didn't look large on their wrist, even if they didn't have tree trunk wrists. So it's really odd, because again, once you put it on, it's like, oh my goodness, it's like this shoebox kind of thing. It's really huge, and it's awkward and ungainly. But once you see it on somebody else, and you're looking at wrist shots or whatever, it just looks fantastic in a way. I still I am seeing a Monaco in my future somewhere. It's just a little bit of a choice paralysis, because there have been a few too many good ones over the years, and there's bound to be more. So yeah.
That's why I agree. Watches like the Monaco are nearly impossible to help when it comes to deciding. Like, if you want to just get one, if you're like, I'd like a Monaco, oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, other than the good deal that you might find,
brace yourself.
Just imagine, David, if you just wanted, the Gulf color versions. Yeah. Even if you just want to narrow it down to those, you're like, oh my gosh, which one do I get? It's insane the amount of variety there, the small differences, movements. Oh gosh, I
can't imagine they sell, it's a staple of the Tag window. There's always Monacos in the window. So they clearly send a lot of them to the showrooms. But I just can't imagine that many people buy them.
They make you smile. You go in for the Monaco, you put it on, you're like, oh, maybe one day I could wear a watch like that. And then you buy a Carrera and you leave.
That's exactly what happens, actually.
Probably exactly what happens. I'll take that Aqua Racer, please, instead. Great stuff. Well, go and check out. Really interested in what you've got to say about the Monaco. I'll maybe produce one of those, change my mind memes about the Monaco. Yes. Okay, quick round of hit miss maybe for a few watches that we're not going to get time to spend that much on. So first up, Ariel, we'll go to you first. Hit miss maybe on the Versace DV1 ceramic automatic watch.
I mean, I wrote this up, and I like it because I know it'll sell. People did not like this watch. People who are not the target demographic for this did not like this watch.
Surprise me.
I again, this is one of the most toned down, relaxed Versace watches I've ever seen, and yet it was still too Versace for people.
Too Versace for Versace. So maybe a hit for you.
For me?
Ariel.
Oh, no, it's a hit. I like it.
A hit. Excellent. David, hit miss maybe?
I like the vibe, but I'm not a fan of this particular watch, so it's a miss for me.
Yeah, it's awful. Let's not get. It's just awful. It's a miss.
What do people not like about it? Like
because it's just awful. I mean, it's like one of those things you know it when you see it, and I've seen it, and it's awful, and that's all.
Do you feel the same way about the Chanel J12?
No, it's just
sometimes.
It's only two things.
Only after having visited the stand at Watches and Wonders.
Okay, I mean it's a white ceramic watch that's meant to look like something that'll go with a broad range of fashion choices. It's got that Versace bezel, which is in ceramic, and it's that shape. I forgot what they call it, Greco something. And it just is, again, it's about as toned down. It's got a very straightforward dial in the scheme of Versace watches.
Maybe in LA this will go with some fashion.
Ariel,
in west of Scotland this is going nowhere.
All right.
Ariel, you just sounded like the target demographic, like the perfect Versace customer, like the Greco something. Like I don't even know what the pairing is. I just like it.
I'm not like a Versace expert.
Amongst the three of us, you are now.
That's true.
Okay. Right.
I just pointed out the Versace mansion in Miami Beach. It was like, this is where, Versace was shot in front of his house. Now it's a high-end restaurant. So I actually do Versace touring, yes.
Oh, okay.
Ariel on tour 2024. Okay, new release Omega Seamaster Diver 300 Paris 2024 special edition. Hit miss maybe. David, special edition too far?
Yeah, it's a miss in that regard, but I like that it's a white dial with a gold bezel insert. That I like. The color combo I like. So, it's just as a watch itself, it's a hit for me.
Excellent. Ariel?
This is a miss. I mean, bless Omega, but this is a dial that we've seen in the past. They're bringing it back, not to specifically celebrate the Paris Olympics, but that the Paris Olympics are coming. So it's it's very difficult to explain the reason for this watch. So we knew that Omega is going to celebrate the Olympics in a bazillion different ways. I don't see anything here that really says Olympics to me. It is a nice version of it, but I don't think it really should be part of the Olympics collection here. I really want to see a little bit more originality for these watches.
Okay, I think it's a miss for me. I've never liked the bracelets in these watches, but I think it's a miss for me because Omega, last time we did this, we ended up with a COVID epidemic. Have you not learned your lesson? Release the watch when you know the Olympics are definitely going to happen and we're not going to have a worldwide calamity. So I think on the basis that Omega may be tempting fate, they've been sacrificing all this stuff to the moon where they've been making their MoonSwatches. I just think this is asking for trouble. And fundamentally, I just don't like the watch. So it's a miss for me. Finally, this is interesting. The March... is it now?
March Lab.
Somebody, but it's Lab as in it's March LA.B Mansart Automatic.
Yes, but they say March Lab.
Yeah, okay. Well, can they not just spell it properly? I mean, I'm already leaning towards a miss just because of that.
You've lost me already.
March Lab Automatic.
I was just saying, you've lost me as well already. Just with that.
Okay, so I'll go first. So I'm going to give it a maybe. It's different. I'm not, but maybe, if there was somewhere between a maybe and a miss, just because of the dot in between L, A, and B, and have they actually put it on the dial? No. Yes, they have. Have they put the dot on the dial? Yeah. Okay. It's an interesting looking watch. I recommend you go and look at the pictures. It's not a traditional K-shape. Today seems to be a day of non-traditional K-shapes. Ariel, hit miss maybe?
So I know the guys that founded this brand, and I understand the design ethos and things like that. They don't make a lot of mechanical watches, and so this is a rare one. I think it's cool looking. They're hip. They tend to do a good job in the fashion department. You do need to understand what the brand is going for a little bit here. But for me, this is a hit.
David, does it strike you that Ariel's now just becoming the fashionista? We've got Versace. You need to understand what it is they're trying to do.
You do, though.
What I don't understand actually is I'm just looking at this in more detail. Probably should have done this before the show, but on the watch style, the dot is in a different place.
Yeah, so they want it to be lab, but it's really Los Angeles, and then I think Biarritz or some the city in France.
Yes.
What from? Is that the one? Yeah, where they're from.
Yeah,
so
right.
it's supposed to be like. There's a meaning behind it. It's been over a decade since I had this discussion with them, but there's meaning to it. They're not just randomly saying things.
Yeah,
But
so on the watch face, the dot is in the middle between the A and the B, but on everything else, it's at the bottom between the A and the B. So there we go. David.
This is gonna be something that's gonna trip you up forever, I think.
Because if you're on their website, the A, David.
It's a
I'm
floating
shut up now.
dot. It's everywhere.
Oh my God.
That's a dot over. Oh my God, I've got the dot over 90. We've got
It's
the dot
down.
wherever
It's
we
the
like.
middle. It's gone now. What do I do with it?
Instant collector's piece. It's a hit for me because I like the 7-link bracelet. I like the case design because it's out there. Overall, I like this thing very much. I'm not a fan of the movement. But I understand that your money goes towards the case and the bracelet in this instance, and you have to compromise a little bit. It's it for me as well.
What? Just out of curiosity, David, this is a movement that is going to be something we're going to be talking about more because we're going to see more of it. What don't you like about it?
It looks like it reminds me of those like the cheapest like Seiko with the stamped movement parts and all the rest of it. I mean, maybe it's because of this green crystal and whatever else. I haven't seen this in person, but just over the pictures, it looks like one of those rather more basic Seikos. That's the only reason why.
So the Miyota 9000 series?
Yeah, kind of like that.
So the G100 is a Swiss-made upgraded version of that, and they're very, very nice. I wouldn't try to judge it through this green crystal here. So it is a
Green crystal's a bit
Japanese
weird.
architecture.
Yeah.
But it's something we're gonna be seeing a lot more of, which I think is a very interesting story with how what Citizen Group has done with Le Jeu Perret. And again, 5 years ago, there was not watches at this price level with Le Jeu Perret movements, and in fact, it was very rare to see Le Jeu Perret, in anything but specific types of chronographs. And now all of a sudden, it's Le Jeu Perret. And it's interesting, Citizen Group never had a press release about this and talked about the G100. We're just starting to see these things pop up. And I actually had to have them confirm that, yes, indeed, this is essentially an upgraded version of the 9000 architecture.
It reminds me of the NH35A. Maybe it's based on that. Maybe it's like a Miyota. I'm happy about it being a La Jeu Perret. I've been to the manufacturer many years ago. And it's a truly respectable, proper Swiss movement manufacturer. So I look forward to seeing this in person. What is it?
But
It's
look,
like
4 hertz, 6 to 8 hours of power reserve.
Okay, that's cool.
About as accurate as an ETA 2892 or 2824, somewhere in between those. Again, it's saying an NH35A, that's 3 hertz, a lot less accurate. I just want people to understand that the new generations of these Japanese movements do perform on par, and in some instances better than their Swiss counterparts, even though they are less expensive.
Yeah, you know what? I will take it back. 6 to 8 hours, 4 hertz. I'm La Jeu Perret. Okay. It looked like something that reminded me of the NH35s and Miuras of the world. If it's
Minds have been changed. Thank you,
yes,
David.
yeah.
Well, mine hasn't been. It's also 34mm. It's tiny, and the crown looks like it looks like a James Bond watch, like 1970s James Bond would wear this, and the crown would pull out to reveal a wire.
How's that
you
a bad
can then garrote somebody with.
I think
It's
that's
a small
pro.
whiskey canteen.
Small whiskey canteen, you drink from it. Definitely not a Scottish watch if it's only that size. Anyway, great stuff. Really value your opinion, so go and check out that article and leave. There's 21 comments there already. Go and join the chat. That is us for this week, gentlemen. Where can we find you and what are you doing in the next 7 days, Ariel?
I'm hard at work making watch content for all of you out there in the sweaty Los Angeles heat. A little bit of time before I'm going off to Utah, sweat some more with Luminox. We did a giveaway with them, so I'm looking forward to doing that. Definitely a lot of travel coming up. We got the car show here in California later this month in August, and yeah, it's already August. So this is the watchmaker's holiday. In the last week of August, it's going to be new release Apocalypse. And September and October are going to be pretty ridiculous. So we've got a busy several weeks ahead.
Yeah. David, what are you up to?
All the same stuff, watch content, and also I'm planning a lot of travel. Geneva Watch Day is coming right up. Booking meetings for that. It's going to be a very busy week, and after that, I might be off somewhere far away. We'll see. Once that's confirmed, we'll post some teasers on here.
Excellent. Good stuff. Well, you can find me on Instagram at RickTikTok, and you can find everything you want to know about watches at aBlogtoWatch.com. Have a great week. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.